The second floor of a dying building. A black seamstress in a thread-worn apron standing before 5 federal agents who'd come in a convoy that shut down the street. Tara Thompson hadn't seen this much power in the old Fourth Ward since the police raids in 22. Not like this. Not with those expressions, half concern, half something she couldn't read. The lead agent, a woman in a charcoal suit that cost more than Tara's quarterly rent, stood in the cramped office above May's alterations and asked the question that made no sense. "Miss Thompson, do you know Ryan West?" The whole block had seen the convoy by now. Ms. Patterson from the fish market had already texted 3 times. The group chat was exploding. Black SUVs with government plates didn't roll into gentrifying Atlanta neighborhoods to deliver good news. They came to take, to evict, to investigate, to remind you that nothing you built could ever really be yours. Tara looked at the woman with the kind face and the power stance and said the only truth that mattered. "I fixed a man's trousers 3 days ago. I didn't ask his name." The agent's expression shifted, something like recognition, something like relief. The 4 agents behind her exchanged glances that Tara had learned to read over 31 years of being underestimated. She doesn't know. She really doesn't know. "Miss Thompson," the woman said, and her voice dropped into something softer, something that didn't match the earpiece and the weapon Tara could see beneath the jacket. "We need you to come with us. The Minister of Commerce is waiting." And what came next would change everything Tara thought she knew about power and kindness and what you owe the dead. Tara Thompson had run May's alterations for 3 years and 2 months, ever since her grandmother died with $47,000 in medical debt and a mortgage that hadn't been paid in 5 months. The shop occupied the ground floor of a narrow brick building on Randolph Street, the kind of building that developers called character when they wanted to bulldoze it and blight, when they wanted to justify the price. The job didn't pay much. Some months it didn't pay at all. But it came with something money couldn't buy: legacy. Her grandmother, May Thompson, had run this shop for 46 years, had hemmed the wedding dresses of 3 generations of neighborhood women, had taught Tara to thread a needle before she could tie her shoes, had sat at that same cutting table downstairs and said, over and over like a prayer, "Baby girl, we make things beautiful. We fix what's broken." That's not just a job, that's a calling. Tara had believed it once, had gone to SCAD on scholarship, ready to become the designer Nana May always said she could be. Had been 3 months from graduating, her senior collection halfway finished, when the call came. "Your grandmother's in the hospital." The cancer came back. She'd withdrawn that semester. Promised herself it was temporary. Nana May got sicker. The medical bills got bigger. The shop started failing without May's steady hands. And then Nana May was gone, and Tara was 28 years old with a business degree she'd never finished, a dream she couldn't afford, and a building full of ghosts. The shop stayed open because Tara made it stay open. Through the broken AC that turned the second floor into a furnace every summer. Through the property tax increases that came when the neighborhood started revitalizing, which meant white people discovered the rent was cheap and the food was good. Through the eviction notice that had appeared on the door 2 months ago, giving her until March 15th to come up with $23,000 in back taxes or lose everything. She'd been sewing 14-hour days, taking any job. A ripped hem for $8, new buttons for $12. That kind of math didn't add up to $23,000, but it added up to trying, and trying was all Nana May had ever asked. 3 days ago, a man had stumbled into the shop at 4:47 p.m. with torn Tom Ford trousers and desperation in his eyes. She'd fixed them in 38 minutes, refused his money, and thought nothing of it. Just another person who needed help. Just another chance to be the woman Nana May raised her to be. Now the government was in her office, and everything was about to break open. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never get to miss our channel new stories. It is quick, free, and best way to support us in bringing more interesting stories. Your support means the world to us and motivate us to create more good stories. Tell us where you are watching from, your country, city, so we can know how far our stories goes. Thank you. Let's begin the story. The sewing machine's rhythm had become Tara's heartbeat. 3 years of the same punctuated hum, starting before dawn and ending long after the streetlights flickered on outside May's alterations. She'd woken at 5 a.m. again today, the way she had every day since Nana May died. Made coffee in the tiny kitchenette upstairs. descended the narrow stairs to the shop floor where 46 years of her grandmother's work lived in every worn floorboard, every faded photograph on the walls, every careful stitch in the sample garments hanging like ghosts along the back wall. Outside the window, the old Fourth Ward was waking up too. Ms. Patterson opening the fish market across the street. Mr. Chin sweeping the sidewalk in front of his convenience store, the one his family had run since 1992, the one that now had a craft beer shop on one side and a boutique selling $80 candles on the other. The neighborhood was changing, had been changing since the developers discovered that historic charm was profitable, that black folks' low rent was somebody else's opportunity. Tara pulled the first alteration from the morning pile. A bridesmaid's dress, hem needed taking up 3 inches. Simple work. The kind that paid $15 and took 20 minutes if you didn't let your mind wander to the checking account balance you'd seen last night. $127. The property tax bill upstairs, $23,000, due in 30 days or the building would be sold at auction. The math didn't work. Hadn't worked for 3 years. She'd been 3 months from graduating SC80 when the call came. Her senior collection half finished, her designs finally starting to look like something that mattered, like something that could make Nana May proud. Then her mother's voice on the phone, shaking. "Baby, you need to come home." The cancer came back. Tara had promised herself it was temporary. 1 semester. Just until Nana May got better. But Nana May didn't get better. And the medical bills didn't stop coming. And the shop started failing without May's steady hands at the cutting table, her warm voice greeting every customer like family. And then Nana May was gone, and Tara was 28 years old with a half-finished degree, a drawer full of sketches she'd never make, and a building full of everything she had left to lose. "I'll keep it going, Nana," she'd whispered at the funeral, clutching the silver thimble her grandmother had worn every day for 46 years. "I won't let them take it." She'd put the thimble on a chain. Wore it every day now. A reminder. A weight. A promise she was drowning trying to keep. The design stayed hidden in the drawer upstairs. Beautiful, impossible things sketched in stolen moments at 2 a.m. when her hands were too cramped to sew anymore, but her mind wouldn't stop creating. Dresses that told stories. Jackets that held history in every seam. The kind of work that could matter if anyone ever saw it. But matching required money she didn't have and time she couldn't spare, and a world that didn't make space for black girls from the old Fourth Ward who learned to sew at their grandmother's knee. The eviction notice was taped to the door. Everyone who walked by could see it. 30 days. That's what she had left. Tara finished the hem, pressed it carefully, hung it on the rack. Checked her phone. 6:47 a.m. 13 hours until closing. Another day of making things beautiful while everything around her crumbled. Outside, the sun rose over a neighborhood that didn't belong to her people anymore. The bell above the door chimed at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday that had been unremarkable until it wasn't. Tara looked up from the prom dress she was hemming, lavender tulle, $25 job, and saw desperation in an expensive suit. The man who stumbled through the door was the kind of person who didn't belong in May's alterations. Everything about him said money. The pristine white shirt, the watch that probably cost more than her quarterly rent, the Tom Ford trousers that were torn clean through the inseam, a 6-inch gash exposing the lining beneath. "I know you close at 5, he said, breathless, sweat beading at his temples despite the October cool. "My car broke down 2 blocks from here. I have a meeting across town in 90 minutes, and He gestured helplessly at the tear. Every other tailor said no. Tara stood, assessed the damage with the quick efficiency Nana May had trained into her fingers. The fabric was good, heavy wool tight weave. The tear was clean, probably from crawling under the car to check the engine. 38 minutes if she focused. 45 if she was careful. "I can do it," she said. Relief broke across his face like sunrise. "How much?" "I'll pay whatever." "Sit." She pointed to the worn chair by the window. "I'll have it done in 40 minutes. She'd seen that look before. The way power looked when it was stripped away, when all the money and the meetings and the important titles couldn't fix what was broken. He was just a man who needed help. Same as the single mothers who brought in school uniforms to be patched. Same as Mr. Chun when his daughter's wedding dress needed emergency alterations the morning of the ceremony. Nana May's voice, clear as yesterday. "Baby girl, see the person. Not the price tag. Not the profit. The person." Tara threaded her needle with charcoal thread that matched the trouser fabric exactly. Found her rhythm. The machine's hum filled the silence while the stranger sat motionless, watching her work with something like wonder. 38 minutes. Invisible stitching. Reinforced seam. She pressed it carefully, checked the line, found it perfect. Here. She handed him the trousers. He examined her work, ran his fingers over the repair. I can't even see where it was torn. That's the point. He reached for his wallet, pulled out a stack of bills. 500. Please. You saved me. Tara shook her head. I don't want your money. I'm sorry. He looked genuinely confused, like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. You needed help, Tara said simply. I could give it. That's enough. Something shifted in his expression. The way people look when they see themselves reflected in an unexpected mirror. Startled, uncertain, newly aware of something they'd forgotten existed. Why? He asked, quieter now. Because that's what we do here. He stood there another moment, studying her face like he was trying to memorize it. Then he nodded slowly, filing something away in the part of his mind where important things lived. What's your name? Tara Thompson. Thank you, Miss Thompson. He said it with a weight that didn't match the simplicity of the words. Then he left, the bell chiming behind him, and Tara returned to the lavender tool and the ordinary rhythm of her ordinary life. That night, counting the register, she had $142. Rent was due in 6 days. The eviction notice still hung on the door. She locked up at midnight and climbed the stairs to the apartment that smelled like Nana May's lavender sachets, and she thought nothing of the stranger with the torn trousers. Just another person she'd helped when she had nothing left to give. Saturday brought 7 alterations and $203 that disappeared into the envelope marked property tax. Impossible, before Tara could even pretend it made a difference. A communion dress. 2 pairs of work pants. A vintage blazer that needed the lining replaced. The kind of steady, invisible work that kept the lights on, but never quite kept the building standing. She didn't think about the stranger with the torn trousers. She had bigger problems. Like the fact that $203 plus the $127 already in her account still left her $22,670 short of keeping everything Nana May had built. Sunday meant church with Miss Claudine, her neighbor who'd adopted Tara as surrogate niece the day May Thompson died. They sat in the same pew they'd always sat in, 4th row, left side, where the morning light came through the stained glass and painted everything amber and blue. Pastor Williams preached about giving. About how when you open your hands, you make room for blessing. About how God sees every act of kindness, every moment of generosity, every sacrifice made in love. Tara sat there with Nana May's thimble heavy against her chest and thought, I've been giving for 3 years. I've been making room. Where's the blessing? Where's the room? She felt guilty for the thought immediately. But guilt didn't pay property taxes. Monday morning, the landlord called at 8:17 a.m., before Tara had even unlocked the shop door. Miss Thompson, I need a timeline. I'm working on it, Tara said, which was technically true if working on it meant lying awake at 3 a.m. doing math that never came out right. Friday, he said, not unkindly. I need the full amount by Friday, or I have to start the auction process. The bank's not giving me a choice anymore. Friday. 5 days. Tara sat in Nana May's old chair, the velvet wingback by the cutting table, where May had sat every evening to hand-stitch the details that machines couldn't do. The seat cushion still held the shape of her grandmother's body. Sometimes Tara sat here, just to feel close to something that wasn't slipping away. She pulled out her phone, looked up the auction house number she'd been avoiding for 2 months. They bought out failing businesses, sold the equipment piecemeal. The industrial sewing machines alone might bring $8,000. The vintage dress forms maybe another $2,000. It wouldn't be enough. But it would be something. Her gaze drifted to the drawer where she kept her design sketches. 3 years of stolen midnight moments. A full collection she'd titled The Invisible. Working-class uniforms reimagined as high fashion. A janitor's coveralls in Italian wool. A home health aide scrubs in raw silk. A seamstress's apron constructed like couture. Designs that would never exist anywhere except on paper. The Tom Ford stranger had probably forgotten her already. Gone back to his important meetings and his expensive life. Why would he remember the woman who'd fixed his trousers? Kindness was forgettable. Only money mattered in the end. Tara opened the sketchbook, traced her finger over the drawing of a work jacket with quilted details inspired by Nana May's church hats. So much beauty that would never be made. So much talent that would die in a drawer. She laughed, bitter and sharp in the empty shop. Never gonna happen, Nana. Outside, the Monday morning traffic moved past. The city kept spinning. The deadline kept approaching. And Tara Thompson sat in her grandmother's chair, surrounded by everything she was about to lose, and tried to remember what hope felt like. Tara was upstairs organizing the fabric remnants, sorting what could still be sold from what was only good for quilting scraps, when she heard the engines. Not one engine. 3. Heavy, synchronized, the kind of sound that made every dog on the block start barking. She moved to the window, still holding a bolt of navy cotton, and felt her heart stop. 3 black SUVs. Government plates. Men stepping out in dark suits and sunglasses, earpieces catching the morning light. The kind of people who didn't knock before they took what they wanted. This is it, she thought, hands going numb around the fabric. Someone filed a complaint. Code violations. The eviction. They're shutting me down early. She dropped the cotton and ran downstairs, tried to smooth her hair, her shirt, tried to compose herself into something that looked prepared to lose everything. Through the shop window, she could see them forming a perimeter. Professional. Efficient. The way power moved when it had already decided. The bell chimed. The lead agent stepped inside, a woman, surprisingly, with sharp eyes and a kind face that somehow made everything more terrifying. Miss Tara Thompson? Tara's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Yes. We need you to come with us. It's regarding a matter of national interest. National interest. The words didn't make sense. Tara's mind raced through every possibility, each one worse than the last. Had she unknowingly altered stolen goods? Had one of her customers been involved in something illegal? Had someone used her shop as a, "Am I in trouble?" The question barely made it past her throat. Something shifted in the agent's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. No, ma'am. The opposite. The opposite of trouble. Tara didn't know what that meant. Didn't know how to process the way they escorted her outside, gentle but firm, to the middle SUV where the back door opened like a mouth. Inside sat a woman in a suit so pristine it looked like it had never been worn before today. Kind eyes. Gray hair pulled back in a style that said power without shouting it. Miss Thompson. The woman extended her hand. I'm Minister Diane Foster, Department of Commerce. Please sit. Tara sat because her legs had stopped working. Her hands shook in her lap. Through the tinted window, she could see Ms. Patterson standing outside the fish market, phone out, probably already texting the group chat. Government at Tara's shop. Pray for her. I don't understand, Tara whispered. Minister Foster's smile was warm, real. 3 days ago, you performed a service for a man named Ryan West. Do you remember? The name meant nothing. But the image came flooding back. The stranger, frantic and sweating, the torn Tom Ford trousers, the relief in his eyes when she'd handed them back perfect. The man with the torn trousers? Yes. Minister Foster leaned forward slightly, and Tara noticed she was holding a folder. Mr. West is a significant supporter of this administration's initiatives. He's also a billionaire philanthropist, a Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient, and someone whose opinion carries considerable weight in certain circles. Tara's brain couldn't process the words. Billionaire. Presidential Medal. The man had stood in her shop wearing torn pants, looking like any other person having a bad day. He shared your interaction with the president, Minister Foster continued. Specifically, he shared what you said when he tried to pay you. Because you needed help. And I could give it. That's enough. Tara felt like she was drowning in air that had suddenly gotten too thick to breathe. Miss Thompson, Minister Foster said gently, opening the folder, we'd like to talk to you about an opportunity. Minister Foster opened the folder with the careful precision of someone delivering news that would change a life. The First Lady's American Heritage Fashion Initiative, she began, has been running for 40 years. Every year, we select designers to represent American creativity at major international events. This year, the showcase is at the G7 summit in 6 months. Tara's hands were still shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to ground herself in something solid. We need a lead designer, Foster continued. Someone whose work embodies authentic American craftsmanship, dignity in labor, beauty without pretense. She paused, met Tara's eyes. Ryan West personally recommended you. The words didn't land right. Tara heard them, but they belonged to a different universe, a different life, a different person who wasn't sitting in a government SUV trying not to hyperventilate. The package includes a $50,000 advance, paid immediately. A $500,000 production budget. Your completed collection will be placed in the Smithsonian's permanent archive. Global media coverage. Access to resources and connections that will establish your career permanently. $50,000. The number that would save the shop, pay the taxes, fix the AC, give her breathing room for the first time in 3 years. The number she'd been chasing in her sleep. Why me? Tara's voice cracked. I run an alteration shop. I haven't designed anything that's been made in years. I'm nobody. Mr. West disagrees. Minister Foster pulled a letter from the folder, handwritten on heavy stock. He said you reminded him what power is for, that you gave without expecting return, without calculating the cost. He wants to do the same. Tara took the letter with numb fingers but couldn't focus on the words. The paper was expensive. Real. This was real. There are conditions, Foster said, her tone shifting slightly. This is a full-time commitment. You'd start immediately, next Monday. The contract runs 6 months. You'd need to relocate to DC for the duration, work from our design studio, be available for fittings, presentations, media obligations. The shop. Nana May's chair. The promise she'd made at the funeral. The customers who depended on her. The building that held 3 generations of Thompson women's dreams. I can't leave, Tara said. The shop. I understand. Minister Foster's kindness was somehow worse than if she'd been cold. Mr. West mentioned you might say that, which is why the advance is structured to give you options. Hire someone to run the shop. Put it on temporary hiatus. The choice is yours. But it wasn't a choice. It was Sophie's choice. Pick which dream dies. I need to think about it. Of course. You have 48 hours. Foster placed the folder in Tara's hands. Contract details, timeline, Mr. West's full letter. My personal number is on the card inside. I understand this is overwhelming, Miss Thompson. Take the time you need. The agents escorted Tara back to the shop. The SUVs pulled away, smooth and silent. Ms. Patterson was still standing outside the fish market, staring. Tara climbed the stairs to the apartment, sat on the floor with the folder in her lap, and let the world tilt sideways. $50,000. The Smithsonian. Her designs, finally made, finally real. But Nana May's voice, clear as morning. I'll be proud either way, baby girl. Just don't lose yourself chasing somebody else's version of success. Tara opened the folder with shaking hands and tried to figure out which version of herself she was about to become. Tara sat on the floor of the shop at 11 p.m., surrounded by the silence of closed businesses and sleeping neighbors, and opened Ryan West's letter. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the kind of penmanship that took time in a world that had stopped valuing time. Dear Miss Thompson, my mother was a seamstress in Detroit. She raised me alone in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat, and everything I know about value, I learned watching her hands transform fabric into something beautiful. She used to say, the people who make things with their hands understand value better than people who just buy things. She said it when I was 7 and didn't understand why we couldn't afford the toys other kids had. She said it when I was 17 and got accepted to MIT with a full scholarship. She said it the last time I saw her, right before she died 10 years ago. I built a tech empire, became a billionaire before I was 40. And somewhere in all that success, I forgot what she taught me. I got obsessed with wealth, with status, with the kind of power that insulates you from ever needing anyone. 3 days ago, my car broke down. My trousers tore. I was stripped of every piece of armor I'd built around myself, and I stumbled into your shop like any other person having a bad day. You saw a man who needed help. Not a transaction. Not an opportunity. Not a favor you could leverage later. Just help. My mother would have done the same thing. She did do the same thing 1,000 times for people who never paid her back, never remembered her name, never knew what it cost her. I haven't thought about her values in years. I've been too busy accumulating things she would have found meaningless. This isn't charity, Miss Thompson. This is investment. In the kind of America my mother believed in, the one where people take care of each other, where talent matters more than connections, where someone's worth isn't measured by their bank account. You reminded me what I'm supposed to do with all this power. Thank you. Ryan West. Tara cried for the first time since Nana May's funeral. Not the silent tears she'd learned to hide, but the kind that shook her whole body, that came from someplace deeper than grief, deeper than exhaustion. She walked through the shop at midnight, touching every surface like she was memorizing it. The cutting table where Nana had taught her to measure twice, cut once. The vintage sewing machines that still ran perfectly after 40 years. The velvet chair where May had sat every evening, hand-stitching the details machines couldn't do. In the bottom drawer of Nana's old desk, the one Tara hadn't been able to open for 3 years. She found the journal. The leather was worn soft, the pages filled with May's careful cursive. Tara flipped to the end, found an entry dated 2 weeks before Nana died. If Tara's reading this, I'm gone. Baby, don't make this shop a cemetery. I built it so you could have a foundation. But a foundation is for building up, not living in. If you got wings, you fly. I'll be proud either way. Just don't let fear make you small. Don't let my death become your cage. I love this shop, but I loved you more. And love doesn't ask you to stay small. It asks you to become everything you were meant to be. Go be great, baby girl. I'll be watching. Love, Nana. Tara pressed the journal to her chest and felt something break open inside her. Not grief this time, but permission. Permission to want more. Permission to take up space. Permission to build something bigger than survival. She picked up her phone, found Minister Foster's card, and typed a message at 12:47 a.m. I accept. The temporary housing in D.C. was a furnished efficiency in Georgetown that cost more per month than Tara's entire building in Atlanta. Clean lines. Neutral colors. The kind of space that looked like a catalog and felt like a waiting room. The design studio was worse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Potomac. Minimalist workstations in white and chrome. Nothing warm. Nothing lived in. Nothing like the sun-faded chaos of May's alterations where fabric scraps and thread spools and half-finished dreams cluttered every surface with proof that creation was messy. Tara arrived Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp and met the team. 12 designers. 11 white faces, hers, and a spectrum of Ivy League pedigrees printed on the bio sheets they'd all been given. Yale. Parsons. Fit. RISD. Schools that cost more per year than Tara had earned in the last 3. Vivian Ashford stood at the center like gravity had arranged the room around her. 45, blonde, fourth-generation fashion royalty, whose great-grandmother had dressed Eleanor Roosevelt. Her smile was perfect. Her handshake was cold. We're so thrilled to have. A pause delicate as a scalpel. Diversity on the team. The emphasis landed like a stone. Diversity. Not talent. Not skill. Not belonging. The word that meant, you're here to fill a quota, not to matter. The other designers offered polite smiles and distant handshakes, eyes measuring her the way you'd measure fabric before deciding if it was worth the cost. The first meeting started at 10 a.m. Each designer presented their concept for the G7 collection. Vivian went first, modern American minimalism. Clean lines. Neutral palettes. The kind of safe, elegant work that looked expensive in photographs and said absolutely nothing about the country it claimed to represent. The others followed suit. Polished. Technically perfect. Soulless. When Tara's turn came, her hands shook as she pinned her sketches to the board. Dresses inspired by Southern quilting patterns, the kind her great-grandmother made from flour sacks during the Depression. Jackets constructed like Nana May's church hats, all structure and hidden support. Work uniforms reimagined in silk and wool, transforming the invisible labor that built America into something impossible to ignore. She'd titled the collection The Invisible. The silence that followed was polite, carefully maintained, the kind of quiet that spoke volumes. The program director, Margaret Chin, 60-something, white hair, designer glasses, tilted her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Very ethnic. Another pause. But can you do elegant? This is for the G7 summit, not a cultural festival. We need sophistication. Tara's stomach dropped. The translation was clear. We want your black face in the photos. We don't want your black voice in the work. After the meeting, Vivian approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Honey, I'm sure you're talented at what you do. The pause again weaponized. This is just a different level. International stage. World leaders. Maybe stick to what you know. Alterations are important too. The sweetness in her voice made it worse. Condescension wrapped in Southern charm, the kind of violence that never left bruises you could show anyone. Tara made it to her assigned studio, a glass-walled box that felt like an aquarium, before her hands started shaking too hard to hold her pencil. She called Miss Claudine at 3 p.m., voice breaking. They don't want me here. They want a black face they can point to. But they don't want anything black about the work. Miss Claudine's voice came through steady, anchoring. Baby, they're gonna test you. Gonna try to make you small enough to fit in their little boxes. Don't let them make you forget who you are. Don't let them make you forget whose you are. Tara hung up and stared at her sketches, beautiful, honest, hers, and wondered if beautiful and honest was enough when the whole arena was rigged against her. Tara started working 18-hour days because anything less felt like proving them right. Week 3, the fabric shipments arrived from the approved vendors she'd carefully selected: Italian silk, Japanese cotton, French wool that cost $300 per yard. She opened the boxes with her assistant and found cheap polyester that looked like it belonged in a Halloween costume. "There's been a mistake," Tara said, already reaching for her phone. The vendor's voice was polite, confused. "That's what the order form says, Miss Thompson." He emailed the paperwork, her signature at the bottom. Except she'd never signed it. The fabric codes had been changed. Someone had accessed her account, modified her orders, and she had no way to prove it. She reordered everything, paid triple for rush delivery, and watched another $8,000 disappear from her rapidly shrinking advance. Week 4, her design sketches appeared in Women's Wear Daily. The headline made her hands shake. "Heritage Initiative's risky bet. Can alteration shop owner compete?" Vogue followed with a quote from an anonymous source close to the project. "Affirmative action in action. Diversity hire meets high fashion. Let's hope politics don't overshadow artistry." The sketches were unfinished. Rough. Taken from her private workspace and leaked specifically to make her look unprepared, unpolished, unworthy. Her assistant, a young woman named Beth who'd been kind, helpful, apologetic from day one, came to her studio in week 5 with tears in her eyes. "I need to tell you something." Beth's voice shook. "They pressured me to share your sketches. Vivian's team. They said it was standard practice, that everyone's work gets previewed for press strategy. I didn't know they'd use them like that. I'm so sorry." Tara wanted to be angry, but Beth looked genuinely devastated, and anger required energy Tara didn't have anymore. "It's okay," she lied. "Thank you for telling me." That same afternoon, her cousin Marcus called from Atlanta. "Tara, the AC died. It's 95 degrees in here. We've had 3 customers leave without getting their alterations because it's too hot to stay. How much to fix it?" $6,000. Maybe 7. Tara checked her bank account on the phone, already knowing what she'd find. $11,000 left. After paying Nana, May's remaining medical debt. After covering the property taxes. After sending money to keep the shop running while she was gone. After reordering the sabotaged fabric shipments. She couldn't afford $6,000. Not if she wanted to eat. Not if she wanted to keep a safety net for when this whole thing inevitably fell apart. "Can we wait 2 weeks?" she asked, hating herself. Marcus was quiet. "Yeah, we'll manage." She worked until 3 a.m. every night after that, surviving on coffee and the kind of determination that felt less like strength and more like refusing to drown. Her hands shook when she sketched. Her eyes burned. She started having panic attacks in the bathroom, silent, gasping things where she pressed her forehead against the cold tile and counted to 10 over and over until the world stopped tilting. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they said nothing. Vivian passed her in the hallway one afternoon, smiled that perfect smile, and said, "You look tired, honey. Maybe this pace isn't for everyone." Tara made it to her studio, locked the door, and slid down the wall. They were dismantling her piece by piece. Professionally, financially, psychologically. And she had no proof, no recourse, just a growing certainty that she was supposed to fail publicly enough to justify why people like her didn't belong in spaces like this. Outside her glass walls, the Potomac kept flowing. And Tara kept working, because stopping felt like dying. Ryan West appeared at the studio at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, and security didn't even slow him down. Tara looked up from her cutting table, surrounded by fabric samples, half-finished muslins, sketches she'd redrawn 17 times, and felt her exhaustion crystallize into something visible. She probably looked like hell. Hadn't slept more than 4 hours in a week. Hadn't eaten anything but vending machine coffee since noon. "Mr. West." "Ryan. Please." He stood in the doorway of her glass-walled studio, hands in his pockets, looking nothing like the frantic man who'd stumbled into May's alterations 6 weeks ago. He looked around, at the evidence of her late nights, the industrial lighting that made everything feel like an interrogation. "You're here late." "I'm here every night." Something shifted in his expression. He stepped inside, and Tara saw him noticing things. The cheap polyester fabric samples labeled with vendors she'd never use, the printed WWD article on her desk with its cruel headline, the tremor in her hands she couldn't quite control anymore. "They're making it hard for you." It wasn't a question. Tara straightened, felt her spine lock into the defensive posture she'd learned young. I can handle it. You shouldn't have to. His voice was quiet, certain. I can connect you with better suppliers. Ones who won't sabotage your orders. I have lawyers who specialize in workplace discrimination. I don't need rescue. The words came out sharper than she meant, pride flaring hot in her chest. I need a fair shot. There's a difference. Silence filled the studio. Ryan didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't do what powerful men usually did when told their help wasn't wanted. He just nodded, respecting the boundary she'd drawn. My mother was a seamstress, he said after a moment, moving to her cutting table. Raised me alone after my father left. Worked 3 jobs, alterations during the day, night shift at a dry cleaner, weekend catering gigs. She made all my school clothes herself because we couldn't afford new ones. He touched a piece of navy cotton on her table, the kind Nana may use to love. His fingers were gentle, reverent. I got bullied for wearing homemade clothes. Told her I wanted store-bought like the other kids. She sat me down and said, "Baby, people who make things with their hands know more about value than people who just buy things. Don't you ever forget that." He looked at Tara, and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected, recognition. Not pity, not charity, just the shared knowledge of what it meant to come from people who built things, who survived things, who knew the difference between price and worth. "Don't let them make you forget that," he said. He pulled a card from his pocket, set it on her desk. A phone number, handwritten. Nothing else. When you're ready to stop fighting alone. Then he left, footsteps echoing down the empty hallway, and Tara stood in her glass box surrounded by evidence of systematic destruction and stared at the card like it might explode. Pride said, "Tear it up. You don't need anyone." But Nana May's voice, quieter, wiser. "Baby, there's a difference between being strong and being stubborn. Strong people know when to accept help. Stubborn people die alone trying to prove something that don't need proving." Tara put the card in her pocket and went back to work. But she didn't throw it away. Tara had completed 6 prototype pieces in 6 weeks of 18-hour days. The field worker, a dress constructed from denim and raw cotton, quilted with patterns her great-grandmother would have recognized. The seamstress, a jacket built like armor, every seam reinforced the way Nana May taught her, beautiful and unbreakable. The mother, a coat with hidden pockets for everything women carry, designed for hands that never stop working. The dreamer, a gown that looked simple until you saw the construction, complex and brilliant beneath a modest surface. Each piece told a story. Each piece was perfect. The day before the preliminary review, the sprinkler system in her studio malfunctioned. Tara arrived at 7 a.m. to find her workspace flooded. Water pooling on the concrete floor. All 6 prototypes soaked through, stained, the fabric ruined beyond repair. 6 weeks of work destroyed in what the facility's manager called an unfortunate mechanical failure. Vivian's studio next door was completely dry. Security footage showed a camera malfunction during the exact window when the sprinklers activated. Program Director Chin stood in the doorway surveying the damage with an expression that might have been sympathy if sympathy didn't require caring. "These things happen. Can you remake them?" 3 weeks until the review. Tara made it to the bathroom before the panic attack hit. Full body shaking, lungs forgetting how to pull air, the world narrowing to a pinpoint of certainty that she was going to fail, publicly, exactly the way they'd planned. Vivian's assistant found her on the floor 20 minutes later. Beth knelt down, eyes red. "I can't stay silent anymore." "What?" Vivian orchestrated everything. The wrong fabric shipments. The leaked sketches. The flood. Beth's voice shook. "She can't let you succeed. If you do, it threatens everything. The system works when people like her stay on top. You're a threat to that. You're proof that talent matters more than pedigree." Tara stared at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of being part of the problem." Beth stood, wiped her eyes. "I can't testify officially. I'd be blacklisted from every design house in the country. But I can tell you, you're not crazy. This is real, and you deserve to know." Tara sat alone in the destroyed studio until midnight, surrounded by ruined work, and finally pulled out the card Ryan had left. Her fingers shook typing the message, "I'm ready to stop fighting alone." His response came in seconds. "Address?" He arrived in 30 minutes, still in a suit from whatever meeting he'd left, and found her sitting in the wreckage of 6 weeks' worth of dreams. "Tell me what you need." And Tara, who'd spent 3 years refusing help, refusing charity, refusing anything that looked like weakness, finally let herself say the truth. "I need someone who understands what they're doing to me. I need resources they can't sabotage. Her voice broke. I need to not be alone in this. Ryan sat down on the wet floor beside her, expensive suit and all. Okay, he said simply. Let's get to work. Ryan provided what Tara needed. A private studio space that Vivian's team couldn't access, trusted suppliers with contracts he personally guaranteed, a legal team monitoring every move for evidence of sabotage. But more importantly, he introduced her to Lorraine Hayes. Lorraine was 78, with silver hair styled like royalty and hands that still moved with a designer's precision. She lived in a Georgetown row house filled with fabric samples and sketches and 50 years of silence. I designed for Jacqueline Kennedy, Lorraine said over tea in her sun-filled living room. 1962, a suit for her Paris trip. Powder blue, perfect lines. My white colleague presented it, took credit, and I was too afraid of losing my job to fight back. She showed Tara the original sketches, still preserved in acetate sleeves. When I finally demanded recognition, they blacklisted me. No major house would hire me. I spent 50 years teaching home economics in DC public schools. Lorraine smiled, but it was edged with something sharp. My students loved me, but my designs stayed in storage. Tara looked at the sketches. Revolutionary work, decades ahead of its time, lost because the woman who created them had the wrong skin color. They'll let you in the door, Lorraine said, pouring more tea. But they'll make you pay rent on every inch of floor you stand on. Question is, you willing to pay? I don't know if I have a choice. You always have a choice. You can play their game and win. Or you can change the game. How do you change the game? Lorraine's smile turned fierce. You stop apologizing for being who you are. Tara spent 3 weeks rebuilding the collection with Lorraine as consultant, working in the private studio Ryan had secured. This time, she didn't soften anything, didn't make it palatable, didn't translate her vision into something white audiences would find comfortable. She went unapologetically Southern, unapologetically black, unapologetically working class. She incorporated Nana May's actual quilting patterns, the ones that told stories in fabric when words were too dangerous. Used construction techniques from church hats that could survive wind and rain and decades of Sunday services. Transformed work aprons into evening wear, domestic uniforms into couture. Each piece labeled with a name, a story, a life that built America while being erased from its narrative. Ryan came to see the finished designs and stood silent for a full minute. Now that's power, he finally said. Vivian, who had spies everywhere, also saw the designs. Her response came through the grapevine. She'll embarrass herself and the entire program. Program director Chin called Tara in 2 days later. We're concerned about the direction. Margaret's smile was diplomatic. Can we discuss some modifications? Something more universally appealing? No. Silence. Margaret's smile froze. Excuse me? You selected me for this program. This is what I design. If you want something else, you should have chosen someone else. Miss Thompson, we're 3 weeks from the G7 show. Then I guess you need to make a decision. Tara stood. Replace me now and explain to the press why you rejected work celebrating American labor. Or let me do what you hired me to do. Margaret's face went through several expressions: shock, anger, calculation. She was trapped. Replacing Tara this late would be public admission of failure, would invite questions about why the diversity hire didn't work out. Proceed, Margaret finally said, voice tight. Tara walked out with her spine straight, Lorraine's words echoing. Stop apologizing for being who you are. For the first time in 11 weeks, she felt like herself. The Kennedy Center glittered like a promise on the night everything changed. World leaders filled the front rows. International fashion press occupied every other seat. Cameras lined the walls like witnesses waiting to record either history or disaster. Backstage was controlled chaos. Models in various states of undress, makeup artists working with military precision, the hum of hairdryers and urgent whispers creating a soundtrack of high-stakes creativity. Vivian's collection went first at 7 p.m. sharp. Tara watched from the wings as model after model walked out in perfectly executed minimalism. Clean lines, neutral tones, technically flawless work that would photograph beautifully and be forgotten by morning. The applause was polite, expected, the kind of response that meant nothing had been risked and therefore nothing had been gained. Tara's collection was scheduled last. 30 minutes before her showtime, the fire alarm screamed to life. Sprinklers activated in her holding area. Only hers, dousing models, makeup artists, and 6 months of work in cold water. Stains bloomed across silk. Makeup smeared onto carefully pressed fabric. The crew dissolved into panic. "We have to pull out," her stage manager shouted over the chaos. "We can't show damaged pieces at the G7. Tara stood in the middle of the disaster, water dripping from her hair, and thought of Nana May working on a sewing machine held together with duct tape and prayer. Making beauty from flour sacks during the Depression. Creating something from nothing, because that's what survival required. She thought of Lorraine Hayes, erased from history but never bitter, still teaching teenagers to see fabric as possibility. She thought of every black woman who'd had to be twice as good for half the recognition, who'd built empires while being paid in scraps. "We're going on," Tara said. "As is. But the stains. We incorporate them." Her voice was steady now, certain. "Water is part of our story too. Washing clothes. Cleaning houses. Tears shed over kitchen sinks. It belongs here." 20 minutes later, the lights dimmed. Tara's voice filled the Kennedy Center through speakers she'd insisted on installing. "This collection is called The Ones Who Made America. These are not the stories we usually tell, but they are the stories that built everything." The first model walked, the field worker. A dress incorporating cotton-picking patterns, water stains left deliberately visible, transforming damage into design. The audience shifted, uncertain. Second model, the domestic. Uniform transformed into evening wear, intentional wear marks showing the dignity in labor that's usually rendered invisible. Third, the seamstress. Nana May's actual work apron reconstructed as a jacket, every oil stain and thread mark preserved like medals of honor. Fourth, the mother. Church hat construction techniques supporting a gown that moved like Sunday morning, southern quilting patterns telling stories in every seam. Fifth, the dreamer. The piece that had been most damaged by water, now featuring the stain as the central design element, proof that beauty survives destruction. The final model was a 12-year-old black girl from Tara's Atlanta neighborhood, walking in a piece that looked like possibility made fabric. Then Tara herself walked out, wearing the same simple blue shirt and worn jeans she'd been wearing the day she fixed Ryan West's trousers. She stopped center stage. Silence filled the Kennedy Center like held breath. The audience didn't know how to react. This wasn't what G7 fashion shows looked like. This wasn't safe. This wasn't comfortable. Then the First Lady stood. Began to applaud. Ryan West rose from his seat 3 rows back. One by one, like a wave breaking, the entire Kennedy Center stood. The applause lasted 4 minutes, timed later by reporters, building from uncertain to thunderous to something that felt like witnessing history rearrange itself. Backstage, Vivian's face was frozen, watching the carefully constructed world that had always protected people like her begin to shift on its axis. The First Lady did something unprecedented. She walked onto the stage during the standing ovation, approached Tara, and spoke loud enough for the front rows to hear. "This is what American fashion should be. Thank you for reminding us who we are." The press scrum afterward was chaos. "Who are you wearing tonight?" a reporter shouted. Tara looked down at her simple clothes. "I'm wearing what I wore the day I fixed a stranger's trousers for free. Because that's who I am. That's who I've always been." "What about the water damage? Was that intentional?" "It wasn't damage. It was truth. We get wet. We get stained. We survive floods, literal and metaphorical. We keep going. That's the American story they don't usually platform." Across the room, reporters cornered Vivian about her competitive comments that had leaked throughout the process. She started a vague apology, voice tight. "I may have underestimated." Tara's voice cut through. "She didn't underestimate me. She saw exactly who I was and tried to erase it. That's different. That's the system working as designed." She left Vivian stammering and walked away, Nana May's thimble catching the light against her chest. Outside, Ryan West was waiting by the car. "You changed the game," he said. Tara smiled, exhausted and exhilarated and finally free. "No. I just stopped apologizing for playing it my way." The media explosion started before sunrise. Tara woke in her Georgetown apartment to 73 text messages, 42 missed calls, and her face on the front page of the New York Times fashion section. Fashion designer honors working class in stunning G7 show. The Washington Post ran with Tara Thompson redefines American fashion. Vogue's headline was more pointed. The designer they tried to silence. Orders flooded her email before she'd finished her first coffee. Museums requesting pieces for permanent collections. Celebrities wanting custom designs. A major fashion house, one whose runway shows she used to watch on grainy YouTube videos, offering her the creative director position at $500,000 per year. The contract arrived by courier at 10 a.m. She read it sitting at her temporary dining table, hands steady for the first time in months. Move to New York permanently. Design exclusively for their brand. International travel required. The aesthetic should be adaptable to diverse markets, code she recognized immediately. They wanted her success story. They wanted her face in their diversity reports. They wanted everything except the actual work that had gotten her here. The HR director called to discuss details. We love your edge, but we need you to be versatile. Our clientele has certain expectations. Tara hung up without answering. Minister Foster called an hour later, voice warm with congratulations and opportunity. The program wants to extend your contract. 3 more years, showcasing American designers internationally. You'd be the face of the initiative. What about the shop in Atlanta? A pause. We assumed you'd close it now. You've arrived. Arrived. As if success meant leaving behind everything that made you. That night, Miss Claudine called from the fish market across from May's Alterations. Baby, the whole neighborhood is so proud. We got your picture up in every shop window. Mr. Chen made a whole display. Her voice softened. But we miss you. When you coming home? Tara stood at her window overlooking Georgetown's perfect streets and felt something crack open in her chest. She'd spent 6 months fighting to be seen. Had won. The world was offering her everything she'd thought she wanted: money, recognition, security, respect. But she'd barely spoken to her Atlanta community in weeks. The shop was running, but Marcus managed it now. It wasn't hers anymore, wasn't the living extension of Nana May's hands and heart. It was just a business someone else operated while she performed success for audiences who'd only value her as long as she kept performing. She looked at the contract on her table. The extended program offer. The museum requests. The celebrity commissions. All of it asking her to be everything except herself. Nana May's voice, clear as the thimble around her neck. Success that makes you smaller ain't success, baby. It's just a prettier cage. Tara picked up her phone and started typing an email that would surprise everyone, including herself. She was going home, but not to what she'd left. To something new entirely. 6 months after the Kennedy Center, Tara made choices that confused everyone who'd been watching her ascent. She turned down the fashion house, turned down the extended government contract, took the museum money and the private commissions, the ones that let her maintain creative control, and invested every dollar she could spare. May's Design Institute opened in the old 4th Ward on a Tuesday in April, occupying the building next to the original alteration shop. Free design education for neighborhood youth. Tuition paid through profits from Tara's high-end collection sales. Curriculum taught by Lorraine Hayes, whose master classes drew students from across the country, and by local black designers whose work had never gotten the platform it deserved. The original shop stayed open, run by Marcus, functioning as community space and working alteration business. Proof that you could honor the past while building toward the future. Tara split her time between designing, teaching, and living in the apartment above May's where she'd grown up. She created 2 lines that operated simultaneously. The Heritage Collection, museum-quality pieces priced to reflect their artistry, and May's line, same quality construction, accessible prices, with a pay-what-you-can option that made fashion journalists clutch their pearls. Won't that devalue your brand? They asked at every interview. Tara's answer never changed. If you can't tell the difference between a $5,000 jacket and a $50 won by looking at the construction, maybe the price was never about the value. Ryan West became a silent partner in the school, refusing all publicity. His only condition, delivered in a handwritten note: do what your grandmother would have done. Lorraine Hayes finally got her retrospective at the Smithsonian. 60 years of erased history corrected. Her designs displayed alongside Tara's, proof that justice delayed could still arrive. Vivian Ashford quietly retired from fashion, citing personal reasons. And Tara Thompson, who'd learned that success measured in other people's terms was just another kind of cage, sat at Nana May's cutting table every Sunday, teaching a new generation that their hands held power, their stories mattered, and beauty built from authenticity would always outlast beauty built from fear. Tara stood at the front of the classroom in May's Design Institute, watching 15 neighborhood kids, ages 12 to 18, bent over their practice fabric. Learning to reinforce seems the way 3 generations of Thompson women had learned before them. Miss Tara? Keisha, 12 years old with box braids and questions that never stopped, held up her work. Why do we do it twice? Once seems fine. Tara smiled, hearing Nana Mae's voice echo across decades, across death, across every choice that had led to this moment. Because once is for making it work. Twice is for making it last. She knelt beside Keisha's workstation, showed her the difference between adequate and enduring. You don't build something real by cutting corners. You build it by caring about the details nobody sees. The hidden seams. The reinforced stress points. The extra stitch that means the difference between surviving one season and surviving generations. Keisha nodded, tried again, got it right. Her smile could have powered the whole building. Outside, a car pulled up, Ryan West's black sedan, arriving to pick up his niece Maya, who'd been attending the school for 3 months. He waved through the window. Tara waved back. No cameras. No press releases. Just two people who'd reminded each other what power was for, now watching the next generation learn the same lesson. Class ended at 5 p.m. Students packed up their supplies, chattering about their projects, their dreams, their futures that looked different now because someone had invested in making them visible. Tara stayed at her cutting table after everyone left, sketching new designs in the golden hour light that poured through windows Nana Mae had looked through for 46 years. In the corner of the paper, she wrote what she always wrote. For the ones who make things. For the ones who give without asking return. For Nana Mae. For all of us still becoming. The shop door opened. Another student arriving early for office hours, portfolio tucked under her arm, hope visible in the way she carried herself. Tara looked up, smiled, felt the weight of Nana Mae's thimble against her chest, that silver circle of legacy, now her compass. Come on in. Let's see what you're working on. Through the window, visible from the street, 2 signs hung above the door. The original, Mae's Alterations, EST 1987. The new, Mae's Design Institute, where we build what lasts. Inside, the sounds continued, scissors cutting fabric, sewing machines humming their ancient rhythm, young voices learning that their hands held power, their stories mattered, their existence was not an accident, but an inheritance. The sound of legacy refusing to die. The sound of creation passing from one generation to the next. Tara's hands moved across fabric, teaching, building, becoming everything Nana Mae had known she could be. The camera pulled back, the light faded, and the work continued. So much effort was put into the making of this video. Please support us by hitting the subscribe button, like and share. See you on the next one.